Well, as we talked, it is quite a contrast, I guess. Let's go back over the years to the first production on a stage with artificial sets. Tell us about it.
They were real as you could be. All the timbers were brought from that part of the country, and they were old, and they'd been taken down from old cabins that had fallen apart, and then all that made it look really very solid and real. Of course, we had a painted backdrop instead of the real hills, but.
And then you go out to the real hills. What did that impart to you in these portrayals?
I want to talk a little more about what Jesse was talking about, and I'll get to the hills in a moment. We even went so far as to bring up, the story is laid in Rabun Gap, northern Georgia, and the soil there is very red. So we brought up soil from Georgia to cover the stage. And as Jesse said, they brought up all the timbers to make the cabin.
This sounds like a Belasco approach to naturalism here or something.
Well, it was, and the backdrop was really most beautifully painted. The set was designed by a wonderful designer named David Mitchell. Now I'm talking about the New York production. We had done 2 productions prior to the New York one at the Stratford Festival Theatre in Stratford, Ontario, and the second one at the Guthrie Theatre in Minneapolis.
Now, in the meantime, had there been motion picture production companies beckoning for this property or not?
No. We thought there would be, but there weren't. And it took courage to do, because it's a gentle story and a rather offbeat one. And it was the Hallmark people saw it in a production in Los Angeles, and then came to us and said, we'd like to acquire the rights to the play, and we would like you and Susan Cooper to write the teleplay. That didn't work out because I was making Batteries Not Included. So Susan did it on her own, and very well, I think. And then and they wanted us to play it.
Meanwhile, so, the name Hallmark Hall of Fame must have had a certain...
Oh yes, that's quality. We knew that. Yes.
So going into it, you had a certain name recognition already there?
We knew that if Hallmark did it, it would be done properly, and it would not be gussied up, if you understand that expression, to suit an audience that it would be wrong for this play.
That's the way Annie would say it, isn't it?
I don't know. Yes, probably.
Meanwhile, they take the production out to Carolina. Tell us about working in a real location now as opposed to the stage. Whoever wants to go first.
Well, it made a vast difference. You can't confuse something for the theater with something done for television or done for film. It's a different medium. You're so dependent on the visual image. The camera catches things which you can't even see in a theater. Actually, the illusion that we got in the theater was, I think, quite extraordinary. I'm back talking about the set again, because while they painted the backdrop, a vast backdrop covered the whole back of the theater, including certain trees in front of it, and then the backdrop is scrimmed. That means there are a series of gauzes, and the effect from sitting up front in the audience is you get an enormous sense of depth. So it was very real. But of course, when you got to Carolina, there was the real thing.
And it was early spring, I understand. A bit chilly, perhaps?
It was rather pleasant.
It was pleasant.
Early in the morning it would be very chilly, yes, but as soon as it warmed up around about 10 o'clock.
We had timed the production so that the apple orchard would be in full bloom, we thought. And when they found the right cabin and had made certain changes to it, we shot down at the cabin and just below the cabin, there were 2 lovely apple trees, and they came into glorious bloom quite early. And we thought, oh, isn't that marvelous? Because in 2 weeks, we moved up the hill, I suppose another 500 or 600 feet, but that makes a difference in terms of the temperatures. So the trees up there, theoretically, were going to bloom later. What nobody realized was that those trees up in the orchard were very old,
And
had not been well tended, not been properly pruned, and when the time came for us to move, there were no blossoms. So,
Don't tell, don't tell.
That's
Oh,
why
yeah,
they
I'm gonna
talk
tell.
about the advantages of working on a stage.
well, we sent. No, I'm going to tell. That's right. We sent
too bad.
to California, and got thousands of silk apple blossoms, and had to tie them on the trees to give you that orchard in full bloom.
Shades of Joseph von Sternberg here, you know. How many years now have you been playing Hector and Annie?
Well, we played it for the first
Not all
time.
the time. I mean, we've done a lot of things in between
Indeed.
production. But the first one was what?
I think 78.
78.
And over that time, you must have heard from a lot of people who knew a Hector and an
Oh,
Annie in their
yes.
own family.
Indeed, people are always coming and saying, you remind me of my grandmother. But you know, you were talking about the differences between stage and film. I think you lose some things when you go to film, because somehow it's not as concentrated. And you gain some things. I mean, but it's two different things.
Meanwhile, you will be watching, that is to say, a lot of viewers will be watching you who never have seen Foxfire. That's
Right.
the wonder of TV. For the first time.
Yeah.
Now, you've had a lot of time to think about Foxfire. What would you like to tell them at this time as they go into this show, many of them for the first time?
Enjoy yourselves.
Sure. I hope that it reminds them of their roots, and I hope that they have something to take away with them after the show is over.
When Susan and I were writing the play, we kept talking about the story being affirmative, and I think it is. It's about people of great character. It's a reflection of a culture which threatens to disappear. I mean, the play was drawn on material from the Foxfire books, and the man who inspired that whole undertaking is an extraordinary man named Elliot Wigington. He's a teacher in a high school in Raven Gap, and he felt he was not achieving what he wanted to do with his students, and he had the idea that he would get them a couple of tape recorders and scrounge a couple of cameras and send them up into the mountains to talk to their uncles and aunts and grandparents and cousins and so on about how it was in the old days. And then he got out, I think, a little 2-page mimeographed sheet, sort of school paper, which was called Foxfire.
You've
And
both
that-
met him, I assume.
Oh, we
yes.
met him,
Oh,
and we met him
yes.
and became good friends, and they were marvelous with us. It was the first. We had to go down to acquire the rights. See, at that time when we started, there were 3 Foxfire books. There are now 9, and they've sold about 7 million copies. And they are based on oral histories that the kids took from these interviews. And the school, the Foxfire School, now the foundation, as run by Wigington, is very democratic. The kids have an enormous amount to say, and we had to pass muster with them to get permission.
Which includes accents and things like that, too, I suppose.
Well, I don't know to what
saying-
degree they were concerned about that element, but they were concerned that we not write Little Abner, or and that this not turn out to be Dogpatch.
Which Holly says to John Denver.
Right, exactly.
We're going to have to close this out, I'm afraid, for lack of time. But in conclusion, I'm so happy to see my favorite line, and it's your line, remaining in this adaptation about a little daylight between the ribs. Could I hear you say that just once? You know the one I mean?
Yes,
Nothing
I know the line you mean. There's nothing like daylight between the ribs to clear a man's mind.
Indeed.
But that would not be clear to an audience hearing it unless they understood that it came from a ghost. Man, it was...
I want to thank the two of you so much for talking with us and for your work on stage and screen.